data that we get. So it's going to talk about a lot of different graphs. For the sake of time, I really won't have you do graphs by hand. We are going to use Google Sheets when it comes time for those. So when we do like the quiz, the test over this stuff, you actually will use your Chromebook for parts of it to create those different displays. So first thing, you might need actual paper for notes now because I didn't print. If you have any. So you may already know this. If not, I went ahead and put it up here, but we only have a couple terms, so I didn't do the whole terms packet for this. When I'm talking about a frequency distribution, so I will ask you to make these quite often. And basically all it does is list the category and the number of occurrences. So a frequency distribution is really just a table, and we will list, each row would be a possible outcome, and then we'll just say how many times we got that outcome, okay? So, for example, the first example on your examples handout, in that packet, for section 2.1, I give you a list of colors of M&Ms. So we open up a bag of M&Ms and we write down what color. So if I ask for the frequency distribution, you're just making a table. You're going to list every color and how many times it showed up. All right, so here are the M&Ms. So my frequency distribution, I could say color and frequency. It does not matter what order you put these in, so the first color I see is brown. Let's count how many brown M&Ms we have. You guys get 12. Next, I'll just go in the order of my list. So yellow M&Ms. Let's see how many yellows we had. And I usually just mark them off as I count them. Just kind of make sure I'm not missing any. Red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. Orange. Three blues. And 5 greens. Okay, so not hard a little time consuming if I just list out everything, trying to go through the list and count each other, but very doable. Are there any questions about that? So the next thing that I might ask you to do is list the relative frequencies. So a relative frequency is kind of like a percent. So the relative frequency is just the proportion of observations within a category, or the percent. So what we will just do to find that is the frequency divided by the total observations. All right, it's like saying, what percentage of the time did we get brown M&Ms? So you have to take the number of browns we had, divided by all the M&Ms in my bag. What should those add up to? So they're like, if you think about percents, everything would be what percent? 100%. We will usually just leave these in decimal form. So for our relative frequency, we won't say 25%, we'll just say 0.25. So they should add up to 1 for 100%. It is possible that it won't equal 1 exactly due to rounding error. We know when we divide two numbers, do we always get something nice and pretty? No, if we do 1 divided by 3, we get 0.3 repeating forever. So we'll keep a few decimal places, but due to that rounding error, you may get 0.9999 or 1.0001. There might be just a little bit of error there if you had to round, but it should be extremely close to 1 for 100%. So my next example, example 2, says to make the relative frequency distribution for those M&Ms. When we do this, I'm not going to make you create separate tables. We'll just go back and add another column onto the table that we have. So you do want a calculator here. And these will be my relative frequencies. How many M&Ms are in my bag?
47.
How do you get it, guys?
You add them again.
Have to add up everything. So we have 45 total M&Ms. So to find your frequency, you just divide by 45. So for the brown, you do 12 over 45. You don't have to show that work, although you certainly could. And we get, doesn't work out perfectly. So I'm going to keep a few decimal places, 2.667. If it's not perfect, 3 to 4 decimal places is usually the standard. Yellow, so you do 10 over 45. You get 0.2222. Red, 9 over 45. 0.2. Does everybody understand how we got those numbers? How do I know if it's correct? What can I do to check it?
Add the relative frequencies.
Okay, let's just add that whole column. And we did round, so it may not work out exactly. However, in this case, it did. So it added up to 1 exactly, so we have 100%. So this is like saying 20% of my M&Ms were red. or 13.3% were orange. All right. Is that okay with everyone? So, what if I wanted some graphs? We could make a frequency and a relative frequency bar graph, and there's different ways to do this. What's a bar graph? You've got, so your X and Y axis. We usually do a title, so we could do M&M colors. And then we would put our colors on the bottom. And you want to label that. What would I put on my y-axis here? Yeah, if we're doing A, that's the frequency, or the number. So I'll just count by twos. And then we just make bars for each of these. So we had 12 brown M&Ms. How many yellows do we get? 10 yellows. You can make these bars touching or not, it really doesn't matter. 9 red. 6 orange. 3 blue. And 5 green. Okay, so that's a visual display. If I asked for the relative frequency bar graph, what do you think would change?
Instead of having solid numbers, you have decimals.
Yeah. Instead of putting the frequencies here, we put the relative frequencies. So it would be our percents that we had. Okay, but it's kind of time consuming to do this by hand. And let's be honest, I'm not artistic and I didn't measure anything. This isn't really very pretty or very accurate. So while if you want to do them by hand, you certainly can. I'm going to encourage you to do it on Google Sheets more often. I did print these directions. Some of you may already know I found that some people don't have a lot of experience with Google Sheets. So if you look in your examples packet, towards the end of this section, so if you skip ahead a couple slides, there are the directions for making tables and all the different graphs that we're going to do. So what I want you to do is we're going to get out our Chromebook and we are going to make a table for our frequency. So if I ask you to make a frequency distribution, you could also just type it on Google Sheets. You don't have to draw the table yourself. Then if we want a graph, we have to highlight both of these. We want to insert a chart. Now, Google Sheets, it tries to be smart and guess what you want. So mine came up automatically with a pie chart, which is not what I'm trying to make. So if you go over to the right, it has chart type. And you can select what you want. So this looks a lot like what we just drew, doesn't it? Did everybody, okay. If yours does not look like that, title, so I may want to change this to M&M title, or M&M color. You can do that. It has all kinds of options here. You know, you can change your horizontal axis, you can change your labels there, whatever you need to do. Are there questions there? So, then if I wanted the relative frequency, so we can come back here, and I'm just going to move this over to the side. Shrink it down a little bit. Okay, so you can type in the percentages we found. You can also have Google Sheets find it for you. So we did, for the browns, we had to do 12 divided by 45, and you can type that in and it will find it for you. You know, you can do the formulas if you set this up and say equals and click the B2 divided by 45, and then I can just drag that down and it automatically calculates all of them for me. Okay, so to find my relative frequencies, what we want to do is just divide by 45, right? Let me make this a little bigger. All right, so I'm going to go here. You type equals first to tell it that we're doing a math formula. And I just want to take this number right here, my browns, which was 12. So I'm just going to click that box so it says whatever's in B2 divided by 45 and hit enter. And then it automatically kind of guesses, do you want me to do this all the way down? And say yes, and it will find them all for you. So that's faster than us going through and dividing all of them. And it's perfectly legal. I'm letting you use Chromebooks to find this stuff, so use it. Let that help you. Did everybody get that to work? Okay, so now if I wanted my relative frequency distribution, so if I want a table with just that, I want my colors and my relative frequencies. Do you guys know how to select those two columns? So you highlight the first column. If you hold down the control button, then you can highlight the second column, because I don't want the frequency in the middle. If I highlight all of that, it's going to try to put all of that in one graph for me. And then we can go to Insert, Chart, and it comes up with another chart. Looks just like the other one, but what's different? Right. My y-axis is the decibels. So example 4. This gives us the marital status in millions of U.S. residents 18 years of age or older in 1990 and 2006. Draw a side-by-side relative frequency bar graph of the data. I haven't told you what a side-by-side would look like. What do you think that is? Basically, we'll have the 1990 and the 2006 bars right beside each other. Okay, so the first thing, if we're going to want to make a graph, what do we need to do with this? All right, let's input our information into Google Sheets. Okay. I'm not ready to make my bar graphs though. Why? I asked you to do a side-by-side relative frequency bar graph. And these are my frequencies. So how would I get a relative frequency? Right, we have to add them all up and divide by that total. Okay. So we can put this in different places. You can add columns right here. I think I'm just going to make another table down below with my relative frequencies. Okay, so when you add all those up, what do you get for the 1990? 181.9? Okay, so if I want to find that relative frequency, we say equals. You can click on the box you want, so that's my 40.4, divided by 181.9, and it will autofill the rest of them if we don't want to just sit and divide each one of them by hand. What? Yes. Okay, so you say equals. We click the box we want, so I'm doing the Never Married from 1990, so the 40.4. If I just click that box, it brings it up. Divided by my total was 181.9. And hit enter. Is anyone's not coming up with the autofill underneath? Did everybody get that? So if we do the same thing for 2006. 219.7. So equals, click my box, divided by 219.7. We want a side-by-side bar graph. So I am going to highlight all of this because I want all of it in one table. So my marital status and my relative frequencies for both years. And we're going to go to Insert, Chart again. Now it tries to guess what we might want. Does this look right? It's got the marital status in both years side by side. It gives us a legend, tells us which color is what. So that's what we're looking for. Now we might change some of these titles. They're very not overly informative. So I might say, what do we want to call this? U.S. marital status. Maybe I want to call that my title. You notice, what's wrong with my vertical axis here? Yeah, for whatever reason, mine didn't have any labels there. So we need to change that. So under my vertical axis, we need to be able to add in let's see. So under customize, if you go to chart and axis titles, we can change things there. You can also click on them here and change things. So I want, my vertical axis title was blank, so I'm going to call that, what do we want to say, relative frequencies. And you can play around with it and change other settings as needed. But when I'm grading on these, I'm going to be looking for, is your graph accurate? Does it have what I asked for? And I want labels for both the entire thing and your X and Y axis. Questions there? We have different types. We can do horizontal bars. Really, the only time we do that is when the titles are really long and we want more space to label those. If you want a horizontal bar graph, it's just another option that comes up. So let's just say I selected some of my data and I wanted to insert a graph or insert a chart. You know, it came up with a column chart here, but if I look at my options, I can scroll through until I find a side-by-side that's horizontal. So you can do horizontal, vertical, change those things as needed if I specified. Another type of graph that I'll ask for a lot is the pie chart. So what's a pie chart? It's a circle. Everything's divided into sections based on their percentages. So, you know, if it was half your data, it'll be half the circle. And again, it's the same thing. You highlight your data, insert a chart, and you just have to pick this pie chart and change labels if needed. Okay, so that's the benefit of Google Sheets. You can type in your data one time and give me 4 different charts to go with it, and you don't have to do anything else except select the type you want. So why don't you guys make a pie chart? I think that's example 5 on your packet. I just want a pie chart for this data. So this gives us marital status in 2006. So that's different than the other. It had both, but this is just the 2006. Now, don't we already have this data typed up? You could retype it, or you could realize that right here in my table, I do already have the marital status and the 2006, so I could just select those 2 columns versus retyping it. Totally up to you. And then we can insert our chart, and you have to get a pie chart.